Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're looking at something that honestly fascinates almost all of us, right? The secret to a long, healthy life. But we aren't just talking about, living a little bit longer. We're looking at the absolute upper limits of human survival. We're going to completely unpack the genetic traits of those people who live the absolute longest. It's this massive, fascinating biological mystery, and we're going to explore the whole thing together.
Okay, let's dive into this. How is it that some people just blow right past average life expectancy and actually live to see their 100th or even crazy enough, their 110th birthdays? Think of supercentenarians like Jan Steenberg. We are talking about individuals who have literally lived through over a century of history, stress, totally different environmental changes, and yet they just keep going. So is it just pure luck? Is it their diet? Or is there something fundamentally different hardwired right into their DNA? Well, that is exactly the mystery we're unpacking today by looking at the hard science behind extreme human survival.
Section 1. Reaching 100. Now, researchers don't just study these supercentenarians out of, historical curiosity. They study them because individuals like Jan Steenberg represent the ultimate, undisputed success stories of human biology. Scientists specifically zero in on people living to 110 or older because they almost always carry these incredibly rare genetic variants. When researchers look at the DNA of someone like Steenberg, it's like they're looking for a needle in a massive genomic haystack. Because these aren't just your average everyday genes. These are highly specific, totally unique variants that actively help these individuals survive way, way longer than the average person. They are literally built differently at a microscopic level. And by isolating these rare variants, researchers can start mapping out the exact blueprints of human longevity.
Section 2. Supergenes explained.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the strict biological definition. A supergene is basically a group of neighboring genes that are inherited together. And why is that? Because they stay tightly linked together on the chromosome. So instead of getting all shuffled around and separated during the reproductive process, like normal genes, they get passed down as one complete, unbroken biological package deal. And because they always travel together, they have the power to control these highly complex traits that usually require several different genes working in totally perfect harmony. To really visualize just how powerful a supergene can be, let's look over at the animal kingdom for a second. Take certain butterflies, for example. They use supergenes to determine their wing colors and patterns. But here is the wild part. They don't just use them to make pretty patterns. They specifically use these supergenes to perfectly mimic poisonous butterfly species. And because all the necessary genes to create that specific life-saving disguise are inherited together as this locked-in package deal, the mimicry remains absolutely perfect, generation after generation. That crucial survival trait basically never gets watered down or broken apart.
Section 3. Human supergenetics.
Okay, so we really need to clear up a very common point of confusion here. Supergene, as we literally just learned, is the official scientific term for those tightly linked chromosomes we just saw in the butterflies. On the flip side, we have supergenetics. Now, supergenetics is absolutely not an official scientific term. Rather, it's kind of this informal way of describing a person who just happens to possess unusually favorable genes for health and longevity. It's just a really interesting quirk of how we talk about longevity. We use this catchy term to describe incredibly long-lived humans in a broad, conceptual way, rather than referring strictly to the linked chromosomes themselves.
Honestly, think of it as the ultimate genetic lottery. Everyone inherits genes from their parents, right? That's just basic biology. But some people just happen to inherit specific combinations of genes that essentially give them extra built-in protection against certain diseases and the normal everyday effects of aging. It is exactly like they were born wearing this invisible biological armor that the rest of us simply don't have. And this is exactly what researchers believe protects supercentenarians like Jan Steenberg from the natural wear and tear of a literal century of life. They aren't immortal or anything, but their bodies are just naturally equipped to fight off damage so much more effectively.
Section 4. Traits of extreme longevity. And this brilliantly illustrates what it actually means to have supergenetics in the real world, because it functions almost like this escalating series of human superpowers. So first, someone with these traits might have a naturally lower risk of heart disease, which keeps their cardiovascular system super resilient for decades. But the benefits cascade way further than that. They're also significantly less likely to develop certain cancers. And moving even deeper into their biology, they actually maintain a much stronger immune system, even deep, deep into old age, effortlessly fighting off infections that would severely impact the rest of us. Even more amazingly, their bodies are able to repair cellular damage at just a highly effective rate. And the grand prize of this entire comprehensive, full-body defense system, they stay physically and mentally healthy for a much, much longer period of their lives. So, the crucial point is if we boil all of this complex biology and all these observations down into a single, simple equation, it basically looks like this. Supergenetics equals exceptionally beneficial genes that help a person stay healthy and live way longer than most people. It's that incredible inherited advantage that allows a super rare group of individuals to actually see a century of life. And they aren't just surviving it, they are actively thriving.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Look, we all get a package deal of genes passed down to us. We've seen how specific genetic variants act as this invisible armor for supercentenarians like John Steinberg, letting them push the very limits of the human lifespan. But beneath the surface, right down at the microscopic level, what genetic combinations are hiding in your inherited package deal? What invisible protections or totally unique traits might you be carrying around right now? It's a fascinating question, and science is getting a little closer to answering it every single day. So keep questioning, keep learning, and thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive into the genetic traits of extreme longevity.